The late afternoon sun was a brutal, blinding orange, reflecting mercilessly off the polished chrome of the gas pumps at the Sterling Heights Shell. It was the kind of heat that made the suburban asphalt shimmer. And it was the kind of location, nestled between a bespoke organic grocery and a wealth management firm, where trivial inconveniences were often treated like acts of war. Ellie. Vance pulled her 7-year-old Toyota Highlander up to pump number 4, the furthest from the store entrance, the one with the distinctive green awning that marked it as the premium diesel dispenser. Ellie was running late. She had 2 active kindergartners to collect, and the low fuel light had been a blazing crimson warning for the last 10 miles. She didn't have time for this, but she absolutely needed the specialized fuel for her husband Ethan's new project, a refurbished vintage generator they planned to use for their upcoming camping trip. Ellie swiped her card, the pump display blinking authorizing. She noticed a woman glaring at her from the sleek, gunmetal gray Mercedes GLC parked at pump number 3. This woman, who looked precisely like she demanded to speak to the manager of any establishment within a 5-mile radius, was meticulously polishing the headlamp of her SUV with a linen napkin. She had a tight architectural blonde bob, sunglasses that likely cost more than Ellie's entire monthly grocery budget, and a deeply impatient posture. Ellie ignored her and selected the P-diesel. The fuel began to flow with a satisfying whir. She glanced down at the old, dusty 5-gallon jerry can she had placed next to the pump, a can specifically designed for diesel fuel, and watched the gallon count tick up. She was only planning to put exactly 3 gallons in the can. Ethan needed a baseline for testing the generator before they loaded it up. That's when the polishing stopped. The woman at pump 3, whose name was Brenda, straightened up, her eyes narrowed and fixed on the jerry can. The sound of the diesel nozzle clicking off after exactly 3 gallons was loud in the silence. Ellie paid attention to the receipt printing, grabbing it quickly before turning to secure the cap on the jerry can. "Excuse me?" Brenda's voice sliced through the humid air. It was sharp, clear, and carried a tone of professional offense. Ellie looked up, genuinely confused. "Can I help you?" "That is highly irregular," Brenda stated, gesturing dismissively toward the fuel can with the napkin. "Putting commercial fuel into what is that, a gardening can? At the premium pump? This isn't a depot, dear. You should know better than to block a premium pump with your little errand." Ellie sighed inwardly, already recognizing the script. "It's a regulation-approved diesel fuel container, ma'am. And this is the only pump that dispenses premium diesel, which is what I needed." Brenda took a step closer, her nose wrinkling as if a foul odor had been introduced into her personal space. "Diesel? You're filling a Toyota with diesel? Don't be ridiculous. That car uses standard unleaded. Are you trying to steal high-end fuel and siphon it later? Because I have seen people do that, and I can assure you, I have an excellent memory for license plates." The accusation struck Ellie as so utterly absurd that she felt a short, sharp burst of energy. Not anger, but pure exasperation. "My car is fine, thank you. This fuel is for a generator. I just paid. I'm leaving now." "Oh, you paid," Brenda scoffed, her voice rising in pitch. "Let me see that. I highly doubt you even put enough in there to register. Look at the pump total. It barely moved. You're clearly siphoning small amounts to avoid detection." Ellie had paid $18.67 for the 3 gallons of specialized expensive fuel. The pump meter was now sitting at 0, ready for the next customer. Brenda, blinded by her self-assigned role as the gas station monitor, seemed to believe Ellie had somehow gamed the system. "Ma'am, it's 3 gallons of diesel for the generator. It costs a lot more per gallon than unleaded, which is why the total looks low for a full tank," Ellie explained, trying to keep her tone level. "Don't condescend to me. I know what premium fuel costs." Brenda pulled out her phone, holding it up like a weapon. "You are acting suspiciously, obstructing business, and attempting some form of fuel fraud. I pay thousands in property tax here, and I won't have the value of my neighborhood diminished by petty thieves operating in plain sight." Ellie felt the familiar hot prickle of public humiliation. Several people at the nearby regular pumps were now openly staring. She wanted to disappear. "Please, just stop. I haven't done anything wrong." "I am calling the police," Brenda announced with dramatic flourish, her voice now loud enough to carry across the station. She didn't dial the non-emergency line. She hit the big, bold number. 911. Yes, hello? I need the police immediately at the Sterling Heights Shell Station, pump number 4. I have a situation of attempted gas theft and public disturbance. A woman, in a dusty older beige vehicle, is acting erratically, filling up an unapproved container with premium fuel, and is clearly attempting to defraud the station. She is very aggressive. Yes, I feel threatened. Please hurry. Brenda hung up, her chest puffed out, radiating self-righteous victory. She looked at Ellie with a triumphant, cold glare. It's a misdemeanor, you know. Theft of service. But the public disturbance and resisting, those are felonies. Was 3 gallons of diesel worth a criminal record? Ellie's hands began to tremble. This had escalated faster and more ridiculously than any argument she had ever had. She was a mother, a CPA, a person who meticulously followed all posted signs. The very idea of the police arriving over a $80 fuel purchase, spurred by this woman's fantastical assumptions, was sickening. She quickly texted Ethan, "Emergency at Shell Station. A woman called 911 on me over gas. I'm fine, but please come fast." Within 3 minutes, the air was polluted with the wail of sirens. 2 patrol cars, a surprising number for a gas theft, pulled into the station, lights flashing blue and red, painting the already stressed environment with a frantic, chaotic light. 2 officers emerged. Officer Jones, a young, earnest man with a fresh haircut, and Officer Miller, older, tired and moving with the slow, deliberate pace of a man who had seen too many absurd suburban disputes. Brenda, ever the star of her own drama, immediately rushed toward them before they could even open the cruiser doors completely. "Officers! Thank goodness! She is right there, pump 4! She was attempting to siphon or steal high-grade fuel using an illegal container. She's hostile, and she just refused to identify herself. Look at her vehicle. It doesn't even belong here. She needs to be arrested or at the very least cited for trespassing and theft." Brenda's voice was a torrent of indignation. She pointed a perfectly manicured finger directly at Ellie. Officer Miller held up a calming hand, looking over Brenda's pristine, expensive presence, then at Ellie, who was standing quietly next to her very ordinary Highlander and a legitimate fuel can. "Ma'am, we need you to take a breath," Miller said to Brenda. "We'll talk to everyone separately. You," he said, turning to Ellie, "can you tell us what happened?" Ellie stepped forward, her voice surprisingly steady, despite the knot of anxiety twisting in her stomach. "Officers, I was simply filling a generator can with 3 gallons of premium diesel. I paid with my card. This woman has accused me of theft and fraud because she believes I was siphoning or somehow misusing the pump." Officer Jones looked at the can. "It looks like a regulation diesel can, ma'am." "It is," Ellie confirmed. Brenda interjected sharply, cutting off Jones. "She's lying. She's trying to cover her tracks. Why would she only put in 3 gallons? It's not possible to pay less than $10 with a card. She's lying about the amount and the type of fuel. She's stealing from the station." Officer Miller sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. He knew where this was going. "Okay, let's start with the basics, ma'am. Do you have proof of purchase for the 3 gallons of fuel?" he asked Ellie, the question formal but delivered with a gentle weariness. Ellie reached into her pocket. The paper was slightly crinkled, but the inkjet printing was dark and clear. "Yes, officer. Right here," Ellie said, extending her hand holding the receipt. It was the single, unassailable, non-negotiable proof of her innocence. A silent ledger of truth against Brenda's loud, self-serving fiction. Officer Miller took the paper, unfolded it slowly, and his eyes scanned the printed lines. He saw the transaction date, the time, the pump number, and then the crucial details. Fuel type, premium diesel, gallons, 3,000. And finally, the price, 6 22-gallon Miller's face. Previously, a mask of practiced neutrality began to change. His eyebrows rose slightly. He blinked once, then twice. He looked over the top of the paper, first at Brenda, then back down at the receipt. He handed the receipt to Officer Jones, who leaned in, his expression one of bored formality. Jones read the numbers and the fuel type. A thin, almost imperceptible line formed at the corner of Officer Jones's mouth. He pressed his lips together, clearly trying to maintain his professional composure. he failed. The realization of the utter absurdity of the situation, the 911 call, the flashing lights, the dramatic accusations, all for this single, verifiable and ridiculously small transaction, hit him like a physical shock wave. Officer Miller was watching his partner's face, a slow realization dawning in his own eyes. The gravity of the 911 call versus the reality of the receipt was staggering. The sheer, colossal pettiness of the situation was undeniable. The tension, thick and suffocating. Officer Miller's suppressed chuckle finally broke free, not as a delicate snicker, but as a deep, reverberating bark of laughter that echoed off the metal canopy of the gas station. Officer Jones, the younger man, immediately threw his head back, abandoning all pretense of professionalism as a high-pitched, almost hysterical giggle escaped him. The sound of two armed police officers completely losing it in the middle of a serious public inquiry was so jarring that the few remaining bystanders paused, mid-pump, to stare. Brenda's triumphant smirk disintegrated. Her face, moments ago flushed with self-righteous color, went bone-white with confusion, then immediately scarlet with fury. "What is the meaning of this? Stop that at once!" Brenda shrieked, stamping her foot on the asphalt, a sound lost beneath Miller's guffaws. "This is completely unprofessional. I called 911 for a crime in progress, and you are standing here mocking a taxpayer and a victim. Are you mocking me?" Miller managed to force air into his lungs, wiping an unexpected tear from the corner of his eye. He held the crinkled receipt out, displaying the incriminating evidence of pettiness for the woman who had demanded his presence. "Ma'am," Miller wheezed, shaking his head, "we are laughing because you called a felony-level emergency on this woman for $18.67 worth of diesel. At $6.22 a gallon, you reported a high-stakes, violent theft over 3 gallons of extremely expensive fuel." Officer Jones chimed in, leaning over the patrol car hood, still breathless. $18, ma'am? That's less than what you paid for that? That linen napkin you were polishing your headlight with." Brenda looked at the receipt Miller held, but her eyes refused to process the numbers. She saw the transaction, but her mind twisted the reality to fit her narrative of victimhood and suspicion. "That is irrelevant. The amount is irrelevant. It is the principle." She was using an unauthorized container, attempting to siphon or perhaps resell it. She had no business blocking the premium pump. "This woman is clearly up to no good, and your behavior is completely unacceptable. I demand to see the station manager and your supervisor." The situation reached a fever pitch of noise just as the low thrum of a powerful engine approached. Ethan Vance, Ellie's husband, drove his older model Chevy Tahoe into the station, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. He had sprinted from his office 10 minutes away, fueled by the sheer terror of Ellie's frantic text. He saw the flashing lights, the patrol cars, the knot of officers, and the expensive Mercedes. He spotted Ellie, looking pale but standing firm, and the irate, red-faced woman, Brenda, gesticulating wildly at the police. Ethan parked hastily, slamming the door shut. He moved swiftly to Ellie's side, placing a protective hand on her back. "Ellie, are you okay?" "What the hell happened?" His voice was low and gravelly with contained aggression. Ellie leaned into his touch, her relief palpable. "I'm fine, Ethan. Just this woman. She called 911 because I put 3 gallons of diesel in the generator can." Ethan's eyes flickered to the can, then to the officers, and finally settled on Brenda, his jaw tight. "You called 911? On my wife? For buying fuel?" Brenda immediately redirected her aggressive focus onto the new threat. "And who are you? Another accessory to the crime? She was attempting to defraud this station. I am making a citizen's arrest for public disturbance and obstruction, and I believe you were waiting for her to deliver the stolen goods." Ethan stared at her, genuinely speechless for a beat. The level of delusion was stunning. Stolen goods? "Ma'am, you are staring at a $65,000 Mercedes, and you are accusing the driver of a 9-year-old Toyota of stealing $20 of fuel for a generator that will power our kids' camp trip. My wife is a CPA. We paid with a credit card. Where is the crime?" Officer Miller stepped between Ethan and Brenda, holding up the receipt again. "Sir, we have the receipt right here. Your wife is entirely in the clear. The fuel was paid for, and it was the correct type for that pump. The issue now, ma'am, Miller said, turning firmly back to Brenda, his amusement replaced with severe professionalism. "Is the 911 call?" The atmosphere changed instantly. The laughter stopped, replaced by the heavy, serious weight of law enforcement procedure. "Under Section 43B of the State Code," Miller continued, his voice devoid of warmth, "the use of the emergency 911 system for non-emergency, trivial or malicious purposes carries a penalty. You described this as an attempted theft, public disturbance, and claimed the woman, Ms. Vance, was aggressive and that you felt threatened and needed immediate assistance for what you implied was a dangerous situation." Brenda tried to interrupt. "It was dangerous. She was acting suspiciously." "No, ma'am," Officer Jones cut in, his tone now sharp and accusatory. "We arrived and found Ms. Vance standing quietly by her vehicle with a valid receipt in her hand. You, on the other hand, were demanding she be arrested for a non-existent crime, escalating a minor disagreement into a police matter that tied up 2 patrol units for nearly 15 minutes. We received 2 high-priority calls, an actual vehicle accident 10 miles south and a domestic disturbance, while we were here because you insisted this was an emergency." The realization dawned on Brenda like a cold, sickening wave. She hadn't summoned her personal security force. She had called the actual police, and they were not going to praise her for her vigilance. I was protecting my neighborhood," Brenda stammered, her voice suddenly losing its commanding volume. "I saw something suspicious and I acted." "You filed a false police report and misused emergency services, ma'am," Miller corrected, pulling a thick pad of citations from his belt. "We have the recording of your call, the timestamp, and the clear evidence that there was no crime being committed here. We will have to issue you a citation." Brenda's mouth dropped open. A citation? For calling the police? I was the victim here. She threatened me with a gardening can." Ethan let out a quiet, scornful snort, which only enraged Brenda further. Miller ignored her melodrama, scribbling rapidly on the pad. "The fine for a first-time violation is $500, ma'am. If you dispute it, you can take it up with the judge, but I advise you to review the state laws on emergency line usage." He ripped the paper free and handed it to Brenda. The crisp official edge of the citation contrasted painfully with the chaotic paper receipt Ellie still held. Brenda stared at the citation, her expensive sunglasses doing nothing to hide the sudden, genuine panic in her eyes. $500 for a 15-minute fit of self-important rage. It was the immediate, perfect kick of karma. But then Officer Jones, ever the observant one, spoke up, adding a final, exquisite layer of irony. He looked pointedly at the diesel can, then at the receipt, and then at the shimmering gray Mercedes GLC. "Ma'am, just for future reference, I also noticed the Mercedes you're driving. That particular model. It requires premium unleaded gasoline, not standard. And you've been standing here for over 20 minutes, blocking the only premium diesel pump, which dispenses a fuel you can't even use." Brenda froze, the citation trembling in her hand, and Jones added, his voice dropping to a near whisper of perfectly delivered mockery, "You never actually finished pumping your own gas, did you? You rushed over here and started harassing this woman before you even put your nozzle in the tank. Your payment is about to time out, and you still have to wait for this pump to clear before you can drive over to the unleaded side. The ultimate, final humiliation." Brenda had failed in her self-appointed duty, created an emergency, incurred a hefty fine, and still hadn't accomplished her original goal of fueling her own vehicle. She was trapped, sighted, and utterly defeated, standing at the wrong pump, next to the woman she had tried to have arrested. Ellie watched Brenda crumble, her victory tasting sweeter than she had imagined. She gave Ethan a quick, relieved kiss on the cheek. This was over, except it wasn't. As Ellie and Ethan started to walk toward their Highlander, eager to put the surreal drama behind them, a loud metallic clank drew their attention. The 3-gallon diesel can, which Ellie had simply placed on the ground, had been knocked slightly by Ethan's hurried movement. The cap, which she thought she had secured tightly, had slightly twisted loose, and from the neck of the jerry can, a thin, dark, slick ribbon of expensive premium diesel began to weep onto the flawless, pristine white asphalt of the Sterling Heights Shell Station. It wasn't a lot, maybe a splash, but it was enough to spread a dark, staining patch that smelled powerfully of fuel. It was enough to make Brenda's jaw drop in genuine, horrified outrage at the environmental offense, and it was enough for the young, earnest Officer Jones, who had started walking back to his cruiser, to stop dead in his tracks and turn back, his eyes widening. "Wait a minute," Jones said, rubbing his chin. That is an environmental hazard, and that fuel just spilled in a public refueling area. Ma'am, do you have any cleanup equipment?" The moment of justice had curdled, replaced by the unexpected smelly complication of reality. Ellie and Ethan looked at the dark stain, then at each other, their relief suddenly replaced by a shared, sinking realization. The story was far from over. The dark, oily sheen of premium diesel spread across the pristine white concrete, radiating a pungent, heavy odor that cut through the humid afternoon air. It was a slick, black accusation, directly refuting the Vance's momentary sense of victory. Officer Jones, the younger man, stepped forward, his expression now completely stripped of amusement. "That's not good. Diesel spills are serious business. This is a public fueling area, and that fuel is now leaching into the containment trenches. We need to contain this right now." Ellie, her CPA focus instantly kicking in, moved first. "Ethan, your jacket!" "We need something absorbent." Ethan, already horrified, tore off his lightweight corporate blazer and threw it onto the growing stain. The fine wool soaked up the dark liquid greedily, a futile sacrifice against the chemical spread. No, that's not enough." Officer Miller pulled the radio from his shoulder. "Dispatch, we need a hazmat response level 0 at the Sterling Heights Shell, corner of Grand and 12 Mile. Minor petroleum spill, estimate 3 quarts of diesel. Requesting immediate contact with the station owner for spill kit access." The mention of hazmat sent a fresh wave of terror through Ellie. This was no longer a petty argument. This was official, bureaucratic, and exponentially more dangerous. Brenda, who had been standing frozen with the $500 citation in her hand, suddenly found her voice again, a high-pitched, ecstatic squeal of vindication. "Aha! See? I told you! They are irresponsible. They are criminals! Look at the ecological damage. They should be arrested immediately. You'll fine me $500, but they get to pollute the environment? This is an outrage!" Ethan straightened up, his jacket already ruined and dripping. He rounded on Brenda, his voice low and dangerous. "Shut up, Brenda. Just shut up and pay your fine. You caused all this with your ridiculous 911 call, keeping us here for 20 minutes. "I am not shutting up," Brenda retaliated, advancing with renewed vigor. "I am a witness to a felony environmental violation. Officer, she needs to be taken into custody right now. I want a full cleanup crew here, a complete decontamination of the premises, and the Vances held personally liable for the cost." Just then, a small, harried man rushed out of the store office, his face pale and agitated. This was Mr. Karim Patel, the owner-operator of the Shell station. He had been monitoring the pump activity and heard the police radio chatter echoing through the storefront. "What is happening? 2 police cars? And that smell?" Mr. Patel's eyes immediately locked onto the dark stain and the expensive blazer attempting and failing to stem the flow. He nearly collapsed against pump 3. "Oh, God, diesel, premium diesel. That is the worst. That is a regulatory nightmare." Officer Miller approached Mr. Patel, holding the radio low. "Mr. Patel, we have a minor spill of premium diesel, approximately 3 quarts. We have secured the area. We need your spill kit immediately to deploy booms and absorbent material." Mr. Patel wrung his hands, looking utterly distraught. The kit is in the back storage, but 3 quarts is not minor, officer. Diesel, especially premium, is an instant trigger for the DEQ, Department of Environmental Quality. It seeps differently than unleaded. If it gets into the subgrade, the testing alone can cost thousands. My insurance policy—" He stopped, unable to speak the cost. Ellie watched her husband's face drain of color. Ethan, a man whose professional life was built on meticulous financial planning and risk assessment, understood instantly the gravity of Mr. Patel's words. A minor spill had just become a catastrophic financial liability. "Mr. Patel, we are so incredibly sorry," Ellie said, stepping forward, taking accountability. "It was an accident. We can pay for the cleanup immediately. Just tell us what to do. Brenda let out a theatrical, exaggerated cough. Pay for it? They should pay for the loss of business, and the trauma, and the complete devaluation of my vehicle parked next to the pollution. Officer Jones had finally located the spill kit, a large, bright yellow container, and was ripping it open, pulling out gray, absorbent pads. Vance, help me lay these down now. Mr. Patel, start calling your environmental contractor. Tell them you have a verified diesel spill, level 1 containment needed. The next 20 minutes were a blur of frantic, desperate action. Ethan and Ellie, side by side, knelt on the asphalt, placing pad after pad on the dark stain. The smell was overwhelming, clinging to their clothes and burning their throats. The spilled diesel seemed to fight their efforts, stubbornly bleeding through the pads, mocking their attempts at containment. The two police officers, Miller and Jones, stood guard. Their roles shifted from law enforcement to environmental incident managers. Brenda, meanwhile, had found her most advantageous position, standing behind the officers, phone raised high, taking videos and narrating the Vance crime against nature to what Ellie could only assume was a live stream of her equally privileged friends. And look at them. Brenda's voice boomed, sharp and clear. The perpetrators are now trying to clean up their own mess, using the station's resources. They should be wearing prison stripes. This diesel fuel is an absolute poison. Think of the groundwater contamination. Ellie gritted her teeth, ignoring the verbal assault. She pushed a heavy bag of absorbent clay over a particularly slick section. This wasn't about Brenda anymore. This was about stopping a 5-figure fine from destroying their savings. Finally, the immediate danger was contained, the bulk of the liquid soaked up by the pads, which were now piled in a disgusting, oily heap. Mr. Patel, shaking, had finished his calls. He approached the Vances, who were now covered in sweat and diesel residue. The environmental cleanup crew is on their way, Mr. Patel announced, his voice tight with controlled fear. They will perform the remediation and soil sampling. Because the fuel type is diesel, and because you used a non-vehicle container, my insurance is likely going to fight me on this being a standard accident. Ellie stood up, slowly, painfully. What are the next steps, Mr. Patel? And what kind of costs are we talking about realistically? Mr. Patel's gaze was grave. The contractor's initial deployment fee is $2,000 payable immediately. The soil sampling, testing, and report to the DEQ, that will run between $8,000 and $15,000, depending on the depth of the penetration. If they have to excavate the subgrade, we are talking upwards of $50,000 and 3 days of closure. The number hit Ethan like a physical blow. $50,000. That was the emergency fund they were saving for the kids' college education. All because a small cap came loose, but it was just 3 quarts. Ethan protested, his voice cracking. The volume is irrelevant to the DEQ, Mr. Vance. Officer Miller interjected, returning to his role as the voice of unwelcome law. It is the type of fuel, the location, and the fact that you, as the spiller, failed to prevent the incident. Right now, you are being held liable for the cleanup costs, and we have to report this spill. Your name, your wife's name, your vehicle, and the fact that you spilled diesel are all going into the police report, which goes directly to the state's environmental division. The crushing weight of bureaucracy and hyper-regulation descended upon them. They had won the argument against Brenda, but in doing so, they had triggered a far more dangerous enemy, the government. As the financial reality settled like a lead weight, Ellie's phone, which she had forgotten about entirely, began to ring, an insistent, annoying tone cutting through the petroleum fumes. It was the school. Ellie swiped to answer, her heart pounding. Hello? Yes, this is Ellie Vance. Mrs. Vance, we've been trying to reach you, the voice on the line, brisk and official, said. It's 4:30. Your children Noah and Stella were not collected from the kindergarten pickup line. They are now in the administrative office, and frankly, they are getting quite upset. If they aren't collected within the hour, we will have to contact Child Protective Services. Ellie looked at the massive pile of oily pads. The 2 stern police officers, the ruined jacket, the hysterical Brenda still filming, and the small, dark stain on the asphalt. She had fought the petty Karen and won. She had escaped a false arrest. But she was now facing a 5-figure environmental disaster, a police report, and the imminent threat of her children being taken away. The afternoon had completely, irrevocably shattered. Ellie's world narrowed down to the frantic official voice on her cell phone. Child Protective Services protocol. Uncollected minors. Failure to secure care. No. Please, give me 10 minutes, Ellie pleaded, her voice choked with diesel fumes and panic. She looked at Ethan, who was wrestling with a large orange containment boom. His face was a mask of sweat, fear, and residue. Ethan, I have to go. The school, she whispered, holding the phone away from her ear. They're threatening to call CPS. You have to stay here, handle the police report, and deal with Patel. Ethan stared at the phone, then at the 2 patrol officers and the large yellow hazmat box. He was the one who needed to stay to mitigate the $50,000 threat, but Ellie was the one who needed to rush, as she was technically less contaminated and the children were biologically her primary responsibility in the school's records. Go, Ethan clipped out, his eyes blazing with a desperate resolve. Go, take the Tahoe. I'll call a ride or walk back to the office. Just get the kids and tell them we're okay. We'll sort this hell out later. Ellie didn't wait. She bolted toward her Highlander, ignoring the burning sensation of the diesel on her skin. She fumbled for the keys, threw her purse onto the passenger seat, and cranked the engine. As she backed out, she heard Brenda's voice, amplified by the mic on her phone, narrating her hasty retreat. And now the perpetrator is attempting a high-speed getaway, fleeing the scene of an environmental disaster. Brenda shrieked into the phone she was still holding aloft. That's enough, ma'am! Officer Miller finally snapped, stepping sharply toward Brenda. You are interfering with an active hazmat call and continuing your misuse of the public forum. Put the phone down now, or the next citation won't be $500. Brenda finally lowered the phone, shocked into a momentary silence by the sheer ferocity of Miller's tone. As Ellie sped away, running a dangerous calculation in her mind, how fast she could drive without getting pulled over versus the CPS deadline, Ethan was left alone to face the grim tableau. The air was now thick with anticipation. The first hazmat vehicle, a large, intimidating white truck with bright green lettering, pulled into the station, its specialized equipment dwarfing the patrol cars. 2 men in full white protective suits emerged, moving with the efficient, unnerving calm of professionals dealing with toxic threats. The hazmat supervisor, a man named Henderson, walked directly to Officer Miller, ignoring the rest of the civilians. Spill report. Officer, Henderson stated, his voice muffled by the respirator mask, lending him an otherworldly authority. Miller handed over his clipboard, pointing to the patch of absorbent pads. 3 quarts of premium diesel, Mr. Henderson. The initial spill has been contained, but the spillers, the Vances, are currently being held liable for the cleanup and remediation fees per Mr. Patel, the owner. Henderson scanned the report, his gaze moving from the stain to the large, glistening Mercedes GLC parked stubbornly at the diesel pump. He then looked at the diesel can and the distraught Mr. Patel. And the source of the spill? Henderson asked, pointing to the can. Improperly sealed container, Jones replied. Henderson walked the perimeter slowly, his eyes not on the contained spill, but on the wider area. He stopped near the front of Brenda's Mercedes. He knelt down, scraping a small, dark sample from the asphalt near the rear tire, completely unrelated to the Vance's spill site 10 feet away. Mr. Patel, Henderson said, his voice now carrying an edge of severity, how long has that vehicle been leaking oil or some kind of viscous fluid right here? Mr. Patel, still shell-shocked by the potential $50,000 fine looming over his business, blinked. The Mercedes? Oh, she parks there often. It's been leaving a little drip for a few days. I meant to ask her to move, but I didn't want the trouble. Henderson straightened up, holding the oil sample in a small container. This isn't just oil. It looks like waste motor oil or maybe hydraulic fluid. And look where it is, he pointed with a gloved hand. It's directly above the secondary storm drain inlet. Any runoff from the lot goes right down there. That is a high-priority environmental concern. Your main containment basin is designed for fuel spills at the pump area, not for vehicle leaks at the curb. The officers exchanged a look. The focus was dramatically shifting. Brenda, witnessing this sudden, professional attention on her own vehicle, finally realized the danger. Her face paltered. That's not mine! My car is brand new. That's residue from the Vance's car, Brenda insisted, her voice wavering. Ma'am, the Vance's car is over there, Officer Miller pointed, and they were here for 20 minutes. This leak has been developing for days, according to Mr. Patel. Brenda opened her mouth to argue, but at that exact moment, a third police car, a black, unmarked sedan, screamed into the lot, tires squealing slightly. Out stepped Captain David Harding, the patrol division supervisor, a man whose very presence demanded immediate silence. Captain Harding strode directly to Miller and Jones, his expression thunderous. He completely bypassed the hazmat crew, Mr. Patel and Ethan. What in God's name is happening here? Harding's voice was low, controlled, and infinitely more terrifying than Brenda's screams. I have 2 patrol cars, a hazmat response, and a confirmed logged 911 misuse report that generated all of this. Officer Miller, where is the initial complainant? Miller pointed to Brenda, who instantly tried to adopt a dignified, injured stance. Ma'am, my office just reviewed the audio of your 911 call, Captain Harding said, addressing Brenda directly. You knowingly and repeatedly escalated a minor civil dispute over a fuel purchase into an emergency situation, claiming aggression and threats that are not supported by the evidence, which includes your own video stream, which we have received clips of. But the spill, Brenda cried out, seizing on the only thing she thought could save her. They caused an environmental disaster. Harding didn't even look at the spill site. His attention was solely focused on the breach of procedure and the waste of public resources. The spill is a matter for the DQ and the hazmat team. Your conduct, ma'am, is a matter for my department. Given the scope of the resources wasted, the fact that 2 high-priority calls were delayed, and your continued obstruction of official cleanup, I am upgrading your citation. You are no longer being cited under 43B, but under Section 112A, misdemeanor filing of a false and malicious police report. You are now required to appear in court, and you will be held liable for the full estimated cost of the police response time, including the hazmat deployment until the point the spill was confirmed, the cost of the police response, and the initial hazmat deployment. Fee the very $2,000 Mr. Patel had quoted was now being shifted entirely to Brenda, the false complainant, for initiating the chain of events. Ethan stood there, utterly immobilized, watching the $2,000 immediate threat transfer from his wallet to Brenda's. Captain Harding turned to Mr. Patel. Mr. Patel, you are the station owner. You need to handle the hazmat response. We will secure the report, and the Vances are released from police custody. Their involvement in the spill, given the circumstances of the false report leading to the distraction, is now a civil matter between you and them, not a criminal environmental prosecution. We are leaving, he turned to his officers. Miller Jones, get that citation signed and then move on. We have an accident to deal with. Miller, a slow grin finally spreading across his face, approached Brenda with the new, heavier citation pad. Brenda, defeated and facing a massive legal headache, looked utterly broken. The Vances were suddenly free. The financial noose had loosened, but the family crisis remained. Ethan looked at the hazmat crew, who were now focusing their attention on the mysterious leak beneath Brenda's Mercedes. He took a deep, diesel-tinged breath and pulled out his phone, his hand trembling as he started to dial the school. He had won the battle against Brenda and dodged the immediate financial bullet, but the clock on Child Protective Services was still ticking, and Ellie was still stuck in traffic, smelling of premium diesel, racing toward an outcome he couldn't control.